Commander Park Ji-won stood at the massive observation window aboard the Arcsuri Council Station, watching the holographic display of Earth's solar system. The quantum barrier surrounding it shimmered with a faint blue glow, containing what many, across the galaxy, feared most: humans. Another military conflict has broken out in their eastern continent, Park reported, gesturing to the data streams flowing across his tablet. This marks the fifth this decade. Senior analyst Moon Hana nodded beside him. Their weapons technology advanced another 4% since our last assessment. Their space exploration attempts have increased by 12%. Park rubbed his temples. The Arcsuri had maintained the quantum barrier for over 4 centuries. Ever since their first disastrous contact with humans, the Council had deemed Earth too dangerous to join the Galactic Concord, a federation of over 3,000 peaceful species. Humans simply possessed too much potential for violence, too much adaptability, too strong a drive to conquer. They'll break through the barrier themselves within 50 years at this rate, Park muttered. Perhaps that would be for the best, Moon replied quietly. Containment has always been a temporary solution. Park shot her a warning glance. Such talk bordered on treason. The Council had been clear. Humanity must remain quarantined for the safety of all. Across the station, Council leader Kim Do-hyun reviewed the latest reports from the outer systems with growing dread. The Vrek-Thar Empire, a relatively new power from the Galactic Rim, had conquered their third Concord world this cycle. The Arcsuri defense fleet was stretched thin, and their allies were losing faith. They've adapted to our shield technology, Defense Minister Kwan reported. Novaris, Prime fell in under 2 days. Kim closed his eyes. The Vrek-Thar's brutality was becoming legendary. They enslaved conquered populations, stripped planets of resources, and left husks behind. The Concord, built on peaceful cooperation for millennia, had forgotten how to fight a true war. There is one option we haven't considered, his aide whispered. Sliding over a sealed data crystal, Kim knew what it contained before activating it. The forbidden contingency plan. He'd rejected it 3 times already. The hologram showed Earth, spinning peacefully behind its quantum prison. Text scrolled alongside it. Combat capabilities, adaptability metrics, psychological assessments. The war gods of Sol, Kim murmured. The ancient name the first Arcsuri explorers had given humans after witnessing their capacity for both creation and destruction. That night, the council chamber erupted in shouting, "You can't be serious!" Science Minister Lee Dongwoo slammed his fist on the table. "We've contained them for a reason. We're losing worlds," Kim shouted back. "The Vrek-Thar have already conquered 17 systems. At their current rate, they'll reach Arcsuri Prime within 2 years. And you think unleashing humans is the solution?" Lee scoffed. "They'll destroy the Vrek-Thar, then turn on us." Commander Park spoke up from his position at the wall. "Perhaps not. Our latest cultural analyses show humans have developed stronger cooperative tendencies in the last century. Their violence is increasingly ritualized rather than practical. The debate raged for hours, but as reports of another fallen world arrived, the mood shifted. Finally, Kim called for the vote. "The motion passes," he announced grimly. "May we not come to regret this day. Commander Park, begin preparations to deactivate the barrier, but carefully. We need a controlled first contact." Park bowed. "And if they learn we've been watching them all this time, that we've kept them prisoner?" Kim's expression darkened. "Let us hope their hatred of the Vrek-Thar exceeds their anger toward us." Meanwhile on Earth, Dr. Lee Mi-young squinted at her computer screen in the Seoul Atmospheric Research Center. For 3 weeks, she'd tracked unusual patterns in the upper atmosphere, fluctuations that defied explanation. Still at it. Her colleague Jang Woo-jin placed a coffee beside her. "Look at these readings," she pointed to the screen. "They're getting stronger. Something's happening in the ionosphere." "Solar flares?" he suggested. "No," she shook her head. "It's too regular, too artificial." Beyond her window, the night sky looked normal to the naked eye. But her instruments told a different story. The barrier that had hidden humanity from the stars was beginning to fail, exactly as the Arcsuri planned. Neither Lee nor anyone else on Earth realized they were being observed, assessed, and now, finally, approached. They didn't know that across the galaxy, they were spoken of in hushed tones as the war gods of Sol. They didn't know that their quarantine was ending not through their own efforts, but because a desperate galactic civilization needed their help. And they certainly didn't know that within days, their understanding of humanity's place in the universe would change forever. As Lee stared at her readings, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. "Something's coming," she whispered. "Something big." In his private chamber, Council Leader Kim looked at the ancient text recovered from the first HFY mission to Earth centuries ago. It contained a warning that had led to the quarantine. Decision: beware the war gods of Earth. They fight not just with weapons, but with will. They adapt. They never surrender. And worst of all, they learn from defeat. Kim hoped those qualities would now save the Concord rather than destroy it. "The war gods are about to awaken," he said to the empty room, "and they'll be furious." Admiral Kang Hyunbin stood frozen on the bridge of the UDS Indomitable, Earth's newest orbital defense platform. The massive view screen showed something impossible. The stars were changing. "What am I looking at?" he demanded, voice barely above a whisper. Lieutenant Park Jin-soo worked frantically at his console. "Unknown, sir. Stellar configurations are shifting. New stars are appearing where none existed before." Kang had spent 27 years in Earth's unified space force. He'd seen solar flares, asteroid impacts, even the colonization of Mars. Nothing had prepared him for this. "It's like a curtain being pulled back," whispered Science Officer Kim Min-ji. That's exactly what it was, though none of them knew it yet. The quantum barrier that had hidden Earth from the rest of the galaxy for centuries was dissolving, precisely as the HFY Council had planned. "Sir," Park's voice cracked with alarm. "Massive object approaching lunar orbit appeared out of nowhere." The view screen shifted to show something that defied human engineering. A ship nearly 3 kilometers long, shaped like a silver leaf, pulsing with soft blue light. Kang hit the emergency alert. Within minutes, defense platforms worldwide activated. Fighter squadrons scrambled. For the first time in history, all of Earth's military forces unified against a potential alien threat. "They're broadcasting," Communications Officer Lee Da-young reported, "in perfect Korean and English, Mandarin, Hindi, Spanish. Sir, they're transmitting in every major Earth language simultaneously." Kang swallowed hard. "Put it through." The face that appeared on screen looked almost human, but not quite. The proportions were wrong, the skin too smooth, the eyes too large and entirely silver. "People of Earth," the alien said in flawless, unaccented Korean. "I am Han Sunwoo, diplomatic envoy of the Galactic Concord. We request immediate audience with your leadership council. The matter is urgent." 48 hours later, Kang sat in the hastily assembled United Defense Council chamber beneath Geneva. World leaders and top military brass crowded the room, faces tense with shock and barely contained anger. Han Sunwoo stood calmly before them, flanked by 2 HFY guards whose silver eyes scanned the room continuously. "Let me understand this clearly," the Secretary General said, voice tight with fury. "Your civilization has kept humanity trapped in our own solar system for centuries without our knowledge or consent?" Han bowed slightly. "Yes, your imprisonment was necessary. Humanity's capacity for violence exceeded that of any species we had encountered. The barrier was erected for the galaxy's protection, and your own." Defense Minister Choi slammed his fist on the table. "How dare you judge us? What gave you the right?" "History gave us the right," Han replied evenly. "The HFY have maintained galactic peace for 9,000 years. When we first observed Earth, you were engaged in your second global conflict. Your weapons development outpaced your ethical evolution. The Council voted unanimously for quarantine." Admiral Kang watched silently, rage mixing with a grudging, strategic respect. The HFY had contained an entire species, without that species ever knowing it was contained. The technological gap was staggering. "If we're such monsters," Kang spoke at last, "why come to us now?" Han's silver eyes fixed on him. "Because we face extinction. The Rekthar Empire has conquered 23 Concord worlds. They enslave. Populations, strip resources, destroy resistance. The Concord has known peace so long we've forgotten how to fight." Han paused, then said the words that would change human history forever. But you haven't forgotten. We need the war gods of Sol. The room erupted in shouting. It took hours more for Han to explain everything. The Galactic Concord, the Rekthar threat, the desperate gamble the Arcsuri Council had taken in releasing humanity. In the days that followed, humanity cycled through shock, rage, wonder, and finally, grim determination. Colonel Yoon Jae, Earth's most decorated tactical officer, was assigned to develop humanity's first interstellar combat strategy. In her secure underground facility, she worked day and night with a team of Earth's finest military minds. Their weakness is predictability, she explained, pointing to simulations of Rekthar attack patterns. They've never faced serious resistance. They expect surrender, Admiral Kang nodded. And they've certainly never faced humans. The Arcsuri provided technology, faster than light engines, shield generators, weapons beyond human development. Earth provided what the galaxy had forgotten, the art of war. Meanwhile, in a secure facility beneath Seoul, technology specialist Choi Taemin made a discovery that sent shockwaves through Earth's leadership. They've been studying us for centuries, he reported, displaying the data he'd extracted from Arcsuri systems. Monitoring our communications, our conflicts, our development, they have files on our military leaders going back generations. Admiral Kang stared at his own file. Detailed psychological assessments, combat effectiveness ratings, even private conversations recorded somehow. Does this change our response? Asked Defense Minister Choi. Kang thought of the Rekthar, of worlds burning, of populations enslaved. No, he said finally. We fight, but we remember this betrayal. Within weeks, Earth's first interstellar fleet prepared for departure. Human engineers had worked alongside Arcsuri technicians, adapting alien technology to human vessels. The results were magnificent and terrible, warships unlike anything either species had created alone. On the eve of departure, Admiral Kang stood on the observation deck of the flagship, renamed Liberator. Beyond the viewports, Earth shone, blue and beautiful. The stars around it were no longer just distant lights, but destinations filled with allies and enemies alike. You were right to fear us, he whispered, knowing no one could hear. But you were wrong to cage us. The war gods of Sol were awake, and they were furious. But they were also, despite everything, still human. And humans protected the innocent, even if it meant fighting alongside those who had wronged them. Tomorrow humanity would join the stars. The bridge of the UN Dauntless hummed with tension as Captain Bei Jinwoo studied the tactical display. The Rekthar invasion fleet hung in orbit around New Centauri, their jagged ships forming a blockade pattern they'd used successfully in 17 previous conquests. Below them, the colony's shield grid was already failing under systematic bombardment. Tactical assessment, Bei asked, his voice steady despite the odds. Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho looked up from his station. 27 Rekthar warships against our 8. Their technology is comparable to ours, but they outnumber us more than 3 to 1. Communications officer Jang Hyerin turned from her console. New Centauri reports their shields will fail. Within 3 hours, civilian casualties already in the thousands. Bei nodded, taking it all in. The Dauntless led Earth's first combat fleet into alien space, carrying the hopes of both humanity and the Concord. No pressure. What do we know about this system that they don't? He asked suddenly. Navigation officer Lee Junho looked confused. Sir, we are newcomers here, but so are they, Bei explained. What natural features might they have overlooked? Understanding dawned on Lee's face as he studied the star charts. The twin suns, Captain. New Centauri orbits a binary star system. The secondary sun will cross behind the primary in approximately 20 minutes, creating a massive solar flare. Standard procedure is to avoid that area of space during the event. A slow smile spread across Bei's face. And I bet the Rekthar know that too. How close can we get without shield damage? With our new Arcsuri deflectors, much closer than they'd expect possible. Bei opened the fleet channel. All ships, this is Captain Bei. Humanity's first battle among the stars will not be a defeat. New formation, details transmitting now. Weapons hot, prepare for my mark. 20 minutes later, the UN Dauntless led the human fleet straight toward the binary suns of New Centauri, just as they aligned. The resulting solar flare was magnificent and deadly, a storm of radiation and plasma that would destroy unshielded ships. But the human vessels, with their modified shields, rode the wavefront like surfers on a tsunami, using the stellar eruption as cover. The Vrekthar sensors, calibrated to detect ships approaching from safe vectors, failed to register the human fleet until they emerged from the flare directly behind the invasion force. "Fire everything!" Bay ordered. The first volley caught 3 Vrekthar destroyers completely unshielded. They erupted in silent explosions, debris spinning away in the void. The remaining enemy ships scrambled to reorient, breaking their careful blockade formation. "They're confused," Tactical Officer Park Min-jun reported with satisfaction. "Their command structure is centralized. They're waiting for orders." "Then let's not give them time to receive any," Bay replied. "Execute Phase 2. While the space battle raged, Lieutenant Song Yunha led the 5th Orbital Drop Battalion toward the planet's surface. Their drop pods, designed for stealth insertion, fell like meteors through gaps in the Vrekthar fleet. Song had studied every scrap of intelligence on Vrekthar ground tactics. They always followed the same playbook: secure the capital, establish processing centers for the population, begin resource extraction. Predictable, efficient, and now fatally flawed. Her pod slammed into the surface 3 kilometers from New Centauri's main settlement. As her troops deployed, she activated her tactical visor, marking enemy positions throughout the colony. "Remember your training," she told her soldiers over the comm. "They expect surrender and compliance. They've never faced humans before. Let's show them why they should have feared us." The Vrekthar had positioned their forces to control population centers, not to defend against external attack. Song's battalion hit them from multiple directions simultaneously, using the colony's drainage tunnels and maintenance corridors to move unseen. In the command center, Song watched the operation unfold through her soldiers' feeds. Sergeant Han, Junho's squad ambushed a Vrekthar patrol, their silent takedown preserving the element of surprise. Corporal An Mi-young's team secured the central power station before the invaders could sabotage it. "They're not adapting," Song observed with grim satisfaction. "They're fighting by the book." Her executive officer, Lieutenant Kim Won-sik, nodded. "Their conquests have been too easy. They've never needed to improvise." Within hours, the ground battle had turned. The Vrekthar commander, surrounded in the colony's administrative center, finally surrendered. Song stood before the alien, a massive creature with scale-like armor and 4 yellow eyes. "Are you fight without honor?" the Vrekthar hissed in the translator. Ambushes, deception striking from shadows. Song removed her helmet, letting the alien see her human face. "We fight to win. There is no honor in defeat." When the battle ended, 17 Vrekthar ships had been destroyed or captured. The blockade was broken. The New Centauri colony had suffered damage, but was secure. In the aftermath, pilot Oh Min-seo earned galaxy-wide recognition for an act of extraordinary courage. When a civilian transport damaged in the crossfire began losing orbit, Oh redirected her fighter to guide the crippled vessel to safety. The heat shields were failing, she explained later, her face bandaged from burns sustained during the rescue. Someone had to fly between them and atmospheric entry to absorb the worst of it. Her actions saved over 300 colonists. The footage of her small fighter escorting the massive transport, her shields glowing white-hot from the stress, was transmitted across Concord space. In the Auxiliary Council chamber, Commander Park Ji-won presented the battle analysis. "The humans achieved in hours what our simulations predicted would take days, with far fewer casualties than projected." Council leader Kim Do-hyun studied the report. And the Vrekthar prisoner's testimony. Park activated a recording of the interrogation. The Vrekthar commander's translated voice filled the room. "Humans don't fight like the others. They're unpredictable. They use our strengths against us. They fight as if they've been doing it forever." Kim looked troubled. "Perhaps we were right to fear them." Park considered this. "Perhaps. Or perhaps we should have sought their alliance centuries ago rather than their containment." Across Concord space, the news spread rapidly. A Vrekthar. Invasion fleet defeated. New Centauri saved. And most incredibly, it was humans who had done it. The species once feared as dangerous war gods were now seen in a different light. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Bay received the next assignment from Admiral Kang. More Rekthar forces were moving toward the Procyon sector. Earth's fleet would intercept. The galaxy's watching us now, Bay told his crew. Let's show them what humanity stands for. Not conquest, not destruction, but a fierce, unyielding defense of those who cannot defend themselves. The war gods had returned to the stars, and they had found their purpose. Military strategist Yang Yesu stood before a room filled with alien military officers on the Concord training station orbiting Proxima Centauri. Each represented a different species, some with exoskeletons, others with multiple limbs, a few composed mostly of what humans would consider energy. Yet they all shared one thing. They had forgotten how to fight. Today we begin with the most fundamental principle, Jiang said, her voice calm but commanding. War is not just about weapons but about will. A tall crystalline being named Thexor raised what passed for a hand. Clarify will. Our translation matrix suggests multiple meanings. Jiang smiled slightly. The determination to continue despite hardship. The resolve to fight when surrender seems easier. The Rekthar expect you to give up. They've conquered 17 worlds without serious resistance because their victims believed defeat was inevitable. She activated a holographic display showing the Battle of New Centauri. Captain Bay was outnumbered 3-1, yet achieved victory. Not because humans have superior technology. We don't. But because we refuse to accept defeat as the only outcome, the aliens murmured among themselves. This concept seemed revolutionary to species who had known peace for millennia. Tomorrow, Zhang continued, we study deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare. Concepts your cultures may find uncomfortable, but remember, the Vrekthar understand only domination. They must be taught that some species will never submit. Similar training centers opened across Concord space. On a dozen worlds, human military advisors taught alien allies concepts that had driven human conflict for centuries: guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, strategic retreats. On the water world of Aquaria, Admiral Lee Sung-hoon demonstrated naval tactics to amphibious krill warriors. On the gas giant Juptron, Wing Commander Kang Miju taught atmospheric combat to the floating aerovores. Each human instructor found themselves explaining not just tactics, but the psychology behind them. You must understand your enemy, Lee told his webbed students as they floated in Aquaria's vast ocean. Not just their capabilities, but their thoughts, their culture, their fears. The Rekthar fear humiliation more than death. Use that. The Concord military, dormant for generations, slowly awakened under human guidance. Ships were retrofitted, defensive systems upgraded, soldiers trained not just to die with honor, but to win at any cost. Meanwhile, the Rekthar Empire observed with mounting concern. Their initial dismissal of humans as just another weak Concord species had proved catastrophically wrong. After 3 more decisive defeats, their high command reached a desperate conclusion. Earth must be destroyed before humans could fully mobilize the Concord's resources. In the darkness beyond Neptune, sensors detected the Rekthar Armada as it exited light speed. Over 60 warships, the largest fleet they had ever assembled, prepared to strike humanity's homeworld. They expected an undefended birthplace, with most human forces deployed across Concord space. What they found instead was a solar system, transformed into a fortress. Major Ryu Junho stood in the command center of Orbital Defense Station Aegis, one of 20 platforms surrounding Earth like a protective constellation. When the Rekthar had imprisoned humanity in their own solar system, humans had spent centuries making that prison impregnable. All defense grids online, Ryu reported. Planetary shield at full capacity. Mars Defense Force reports ready. Jupiter. Mining colonies evacuated and weaponized. Admiral Kang nodded grimly. They've committed everything to this attack. If they break through to Earth... They won't, Ryu said with quiet confidence. The battle began in the outer system, the Rekthar, expected to brush aside token resistance. Instead, they encountered minefields hidden in the Kuiper Belt, automated defense platforms concealed in Saturn's rings, an entire fleet waiting in the shadow of Jupiter. Commander Nam Su-min led the counterattack from the UEN Vengeance. "They've overextended," she told her bridge crew as the Rekthar formation began to fragment. "They expected us to defend Earth directly. They never anticipated we'd fight for every meter of our system." The Rekthar, accustomed to direct assaults against weak opponents, found themselves caught in humanity's oldest military strategy, defense in depth. Each kilometer they advanced cost them ships and momentum. Inside Earth's atmosphere, civilian populations watched the battle unfold on emergency broadcasts. Communications officer Im Dae-hyun, aboard the defense station Aegis, had been tasked with keeping Earth's people informed, but the young officer saw a greater opportunity. "With respect, Major," Im said to Ryu, "we should broadcast this throughout Concord space. Every occupied world should see the Rekthar being defeated." Ryu considered the suggestion. "Do it." Using the Concord's communication network, Im sent real-time footage of the battle to every world within range. On planets under Rekthar control, oppressed populations gathered around forbidden receivers to watch humanity's defense of their homeworld. They saw Major Ryu coordinating the orbital platforms in perfect synchronization, creating overlapping fields of fire that trapped Rekthar ships between them. They witnessed Commander Nam's daring maneuver through the asteroid belt, emerging behind the Rekthar flagship to deliver a crippling blow. Most importantly, they saw the Rekthar, the seemingly invincible conquerors, retreating in disarray. As humanity's defenses held firm, by the battle's third day the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Rekthar armada, reduced to less than 30 ships, attempted to withdraw. But Commander Nam had anticipated this. "All ships execute Thermopylae Protocol," she ordered. Human vessels that had appeared to retreat earlier now revealed themselves, cutting off the Rekthar escape route. The trap closed. "You have one opportunity to surrender," Nam transmitted to the Rekthar command ship. "Power down weapons and prepare to be boarded." For the first time in their history of conquest, the Rekthar surrendered. As the battle ended, Im Dae-hyun broadcast the final moments across the galaxy. Today, humanity defended not just Earth, but the principle that freedom cannot be extinguished by force. His voice carried to countless worlds. The Rekthar believed no species would fight to the last. They were wrong. His words reached occupied planets where resistance had seemed futile. Within days, reports arrived of uprisings on Rekthar-controlled worlds. The conquered had found new courage in humanity's example. In her training center on Proxima Centauri, Yang Hye-soo received the news with quiet satisfaction. Her alien students now understood what she had been teaching them. "The battle for Seoul will be studied for generations," she told them. Not because of the tactics, though they were sound, not because of the technology, though it was well applied, but because it demonstrated the most powerful force in warfare, a people unwilling to be conquered. The war gods had defended their home, and in doing so, they had taught the galaxy how to defend itself. The Grand Assembly Hall on Neutral Station gleamed with light reflected from 1,000 worlds. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on this artificial world, constructed at the exact midpoint between former Concord space and what had once been the Rekthar Empire. The symbolism was deliberate. Here, no species claimed home advantage. Admiral Kang Hyunbin stood at the viewport, watching the procession of ships arriving. From sleek Arcsuri vessels to the organic hulls of the Zenth, from the crystal ships of the Luminari to the massive colony transports of the formerly enslaved Dren, and among them Earth's delegation aboard the UEN Peacemaker, no longer a warship but refitted as a diplomatic vessel. "Quite a sight," said Council Leader Kim Do-hyun, joining him at the window. The Arcsuri leader looked older now, the silver of his eyes dimmed somewhat by the strain of recent months. "I never imagined humans would stand here," Kang replied honestly. "When your diplomat first appeared in our skies, I was ready to fight to the death." Kim nodded slowly. "And we feared that very quality in your species. Yet it saved us all." The Rekthar Empire had collapsed with shocking speed after their defeat at Earth. Inspired by humanity's example, world after world had risen against their oppressors. The Rekthar, unable to fight on multiple fronts, had retreated to their homeworld, where internal power struggles now consumed them. They were never as strong as they appeared, Kang observed. Their power came from fear. A lesson for us all, Kim replied quietly. The assembly chamber filled gradually. Over 300 species were represented, including 40 formerly, under Vrekthar control. At the center stood a circular table with seats for the 12 chosen representatives who would form the new government's council. Diplomat Shin Ji-yeon, selected to represent Earth, took her place among them. A former peacekeeper who had worked in conflict zones across Earth, she embodied humanity's complexity, a warrior who fought for peace, a pragmatist with deep moral conviction. When the chamber quieted, Elder Ko Sung-hoon of the Arksuri rose to speak. As the oldest spacefaring civilization present, tradition granted them first voice. For 9,000 years, the Concord maintained peace through isolation and containment, Ko began, his amplified voice reaching every corner of the vast room. We believed this the safest path. We were wrong. A murmur ran through the assembly. When we discovered humanity, we saw only their capacity for violence. We erected the quantum barrier not just to protect the galaxy from humans, but to protect humans from themselves. Ko paused, his silver eyes finding Kang in the crowd. In our arrogance, we became the very thing we feared, beings who would imprison others for our comfort. Ko's formal apology continued, but Kang barely heard the words. His thoughts drifted to the billions who had lived and died on Earth, never knowing they were prisoners. Generations who had gazed at the stars, unaware that those stars had been hidden from them. When Admiral Kang was called to address the assembly, he walked slowly to the central podium. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on him. A human, speaking for humanity, to a galaxy that had both feared and needed them. Many of you know us as the war gods of Sol, he began. A name given out of fear. But we are not gods of war. We are simply those who never forgot its cost. He looked around the chamber, meeting alien gazes both familiar and utterly strange. Humanity fought itself for millennia. We nearly destroyed our world multiple times. Each battle taught us something, not just about how to fight, but about why to fight, and when not to. Kang gestured to the stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome. The Rekthar failed because they never understood that conquest creates only temporary power. True strength comes from cooperation, from mutual respect, from recognizing that different perspectives make us all stronger. He turned to the Arksuri delegation. We could hate you for imprisoning us. Part of me still does, but a wiser part recognizes that without that isolation, humanity might have spread our conflicts across the stars before we learned to control them. The new Galactic Federation took shape over the following weeks. Unlike the old Concord, it would maintain a defense force, trained in the strategies humanity had taught. Unlike the Vrekthar Empire, it would respect the autonomy of all member worlds. Its headquarters would be established on Luna, Earth's moon, a compromise location that acknowledged humanity's crucial role while placing the Federation slightly removed from Earth itself. 6 months later, Professor Moon Ji-woo welcomed the first students to the Lunar Academy. The classroom overlooked the magnificent blue curve of Earth, a view that had once been reserved only for humans, but now inspired awe in young minds from 100 worlds. Today, we begin a new chapter in galactic history, Moon told her diverse class. Some students breathed nitrogen, others methane. Some had tentacles, others wings. All wore adaptive environmental suits that allowed them to share the same space. In this course, we will study Earth's conflicts, not to glorify them, but to understand them, to learn why peace requires vigilance and how freedom demands protection. A young Arksuri student raised a hand. Professor, my grandfather says humans were contained because you are naturally violent. Is this true? Moon smiled gently. All species have the capacity for both creation and destruction. Humans perhaps feel both impulses strongly, but what defines us isn't our capacity for violence. It's our capacity to choose something better. She activated a holographic display showing the battle for Sol, then switched to images of the Peacemaker on its diplomatic mission, then to Earth scientists helping terraform worlds damaged by Vrekthar mining. "We are not war gods," she said, echoing Admiral Kang's words. "We are guardians of peace who remember why peace must sometimes be defended." As class ended, Moon watched her students file out, the future leaders of a new galactic community. Through the window, she could see construction continuing on the Federation headquarters. Its architecture incorporated elements from dozens of worlds, including the clean lines of Arcsuri design and the practical functionality of human engineering. The quantum barrier that had once hidden Earth was gone forever. Humanity had awakened to find itself part of something greater. The war gods had found a purpose beyond war, teaching the stars how precious peace truly was and why it was worth fighting for. Moon turned back to her desk, preparing for her next class. Outside, Earth and Luna continued their eternal dance, no longer alone in the cosmic night.